12 years ago, the fluorescent lights of Memorial Hospital's oncology ward buzzed overhead like tired insects, casting everything in that peculiar shade of institutional white that makes even healthy people look pale. I adjusted 3-year-old Liam on my hip, his small fingers clutching a stack of crayon drawings we'd spent an entire evening completing. "Remember to walk, not run, sweetheart," I whispered, though he was already squirming to get down, eager to share his artwork with Julia. He called her Miss Julie because he'd heard the nurses use that name, and though she wasn't actually a teacher, she patiently showed him how to draw. Room 412 came into view. Through the doorway, I could see her Julia, barely 20 years old, her once thick auburn hair now reduced to wisps against the stark white pillowcase. The chemotherapy wasn't working anymore. Everyone knew it, but no one spoke the truth aloud in these hallways where hope was rationed like expensive medicine. "Miss Julie," Liam called out, his voice bright with the kind of joy that only children can summon in the darkest places. Julia turned from the window, and despite everything, the pain, the treatments, the knowledge that time was running out, her face transformed with a smile that could power the entire hospital. "There's my favorite artist," she said, extending thin arms toward him. I hung back, watching as Liam carefully spread his drawings across her blanket. Bright crayon worlds where the sun always shines and stick figure people hold hands beneath impossible purple trees. This ritual had become sacred to us every Saturday for the past month. We'd come here not because we had to, but because some connections transcend obligation. "This one's you?" Liam pointed to a figure with orange squiggles for hair. "And this is me. We're at the beach. Mom says beaches have lots of sand, but I've never been to one." "Been to one," I corrected automatically, then winced at how school teacherish I sounded. Julia caught my eye and winked. It was our private joke. The overworked young single mother who couldn't help teaching proper grammar, even while exhausted from working 3 jobs and volunteering here on weekends, because they offered free childcare during shifts. "These are magnificent," Julia told Liam with the complete seriousness that he responded to so well. "No baby talk, no condescension. I'm putting this one right here." She taped a drawing of a rocket ship to her forepole. "That way I can see it all night." I settled into the chair beside her bed, pulling my battered copy of Robert Frost from my volunteer tote bag. Julia loved poetry, though she was too weak to hold books herself now. As I began reading The Road Not Taken, a shadow shifted in the doorway. I glanced up briefly, noting a tall figure, a man watching us, probably one of Julia's relatives, I thought, before returning to the poem. Later, after Liam had fallen asleep in my lap and Julia had dozed off mid-stanza, I carefully packed our things. The container of homemade soup I'd brought sat on her bedside table. The nurses said she hadn't been eating, but sometimes she'd take a few spoonfuls when I brought food from home, saved from my own grocery budget that was already stretched thinner than tissue paper. Julia lived 3 months longer than her doctors predicted. On her final day, she told me that those Saturday afternoons with Liam and me had given her something to look forward to when treatments could no longer offer hope. 9 years later, standing in the grand ballroom of the Ritz, I realized that those Saturday afternoons, those moments of pure human connection, would become both my salvation and the thread that would unravel everything I thought I knew about family. Now, at Belle's wedding, I stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, my navy dress suddenly feeling too tight across my chest. The champagne in my glass trembled like water during an earthquake as my 12-year-old son, Liam, clutched my free hand, his small fingers squeezing mine with increasing pressure. "Mom," Liam whispered, leaning against my side. "Why is everyone looking at us?" I couldn't answer him. My throat had closed, trapping words as surely as if someone had clamped their hand over my mouth. Across the room, my mother Nancy stood beside my sister Belle at the head table, her perfectly coiffed silver hair catching light from the crystal chandeliers. The smug satisfaction on her face sent a cold wave through my stomach. Belle tapped her champagne flute with a silver spoon, the crystal ringing out to silence the murmurs rippling through the reception. "Let's toast my sister," she announced, her voice amplified by the microphone she'd insisted on holding throughout dinner. Clare Thompson, a living proof that one mistake can derail your entire life. Awkward laughter rippled through the crowd. Some guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats while others leaned forward, hungry for drama they hadn't expected with their wedding cake. "Mommy," Liam tugged at my hand harder now. "Why are they being mean to us?" Before I could respond, my mother stepped forward and placed her hand on Belle's shoulder. The diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist, her gift to the bride this morning, caught the light and sent prisms dancing across the white tablecloth. "At least she brought her situation dressed properly today," Nancy added, her lips curved in what photographers would capture as a smile, but what I recognized as contempt. My face burned. The whispers grew louder around us as 200 of Atlanta's wealthiest citizens speculated about the disgrace standing in their midst. 12 years, and nothing had changed. 3 hours earlier, I'd stood in the bridal suite, carefully arranging Belle's cathedral-length veil, while she complained about the florist's failure to procure the exact shade of blush roses she demanded. "You're lucky you never had a real wedding," she'd said, examining her reflection. "So much stress." I'd kept pinning, my fingers steady despite the barb. The ruby earrings our grandmother left me, the only inheritance I received, caught the light as I moved, their deep red a stark contrast to my sister's diamonds. "Claire, couldn't you have found something less? Discount store?" My mother had swept into the room, her critical gaze landing on my dress, purchased during my lunch hour with 2 months of careful saving. I'd straightened the programs I'd hand-lettered after discovering a typo in the printed versions, calmed the flower girl's nerves with her torn sash, handled a dozen crises no one would ever notice or acknowledge. "Belle, honey, the photographer wants some shots before the ceremony." Nate had ushered my sister toward the door. "You look absolutely perfect." "I know," Belle had replied, then turned to me with a dismissive glance. "Make sure those programs are arranged properly this time." Now, standing amid the wreckage of my dignity, I reached for my purse on the table beside me. Time to leave. Time to protect my son from the family that viewed him as nothing more than evidence of my failures. "Don't you dare make a scene," my mother hissed, suddenly beside me, though I hadn't seen her approach. Her fingers dug into my forearm, manicured nails leaving half-moon indentations in my skin. From the microphone, Belle continued, her words slurring slightly from too much champagne. "I mean, we all make choices in life, right? Some of us choose successful husbands and beautiful homes. Others choose." Her gaze landed directly on Liam, who shrank against my side. The wedding photographer moved through the crowd, his camera capturing everything: the gleeful bride, the uncomfortable guests, the single mother and her fatherless son preparing for escape. Tomorrow, these photos would be evidence of a different sort, proof of what my family really thought of us. My spine straightened. Not this time. I placed my glass on the nearest table and guided Liam toward the exit. We'd slip away quietly, no scenes, no tears, just dignity where none had been offered. "Claire," my friend Annie's voice carried despite her attempt at a whisper. Annie was my colleague who'd been invited as one of Belle's college friends. Heads turned. The sound of a chair scraping against marble stopped me mid-step. Daniel Mercer, my new brother-in-law, rose slowly from his seat at the head table. The room fell silent as every eye shifted from my retreat to his unexpected movement. He reached for the microphone, his fingers gently removing it from Belle's hand. His expression remained calm, but something in his eyes, a quiet determination, made even my mother take a step back. "I think that's quite enough," he said, his voice filling the silent room. I stared at him, recognition flickering at the edges of my memory. Something about the way he stood, shoulders squared against disapproval. I'd seen him before Belle brought him home, before the engagement, but I couldn't place when or where. The moment hung suspended, perfect in its tension, as 200 people held their breath, waiting to see what happened next. Daniel's grip on the microphone tightened, his knuckles whitening against the silver handle. The room fell so silent I could hear ice shifting in abandoned glasses. "Many of you know me as an investment banker," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the tension crackling through the ballroom. "What you don't know is that I met Clare Thompson long before Belle introduced us at that Christmas party last year." My breath caught. "What?" Belle lurched forward, diamond earrings swinging wildly as she grabbed for the microphone. "That's impossible. You never met her." The words slurred together, champagne and panic, creating a dangerous cocktail. Daniel sidestepped her reaching hands, with the practiced ease of someone who'd grown accustomed to managing her moods. I remember exactly when and where. His gaze found mine across the room, unwavering. 9 years ago. The floor beneath me seemed to tilt. 9 years ago. When Liam was just a baby. When my family had freshly disowned me. When I was working 3 jobs and volunteering at the hospital on weekends because they offered free childcare during shifts. "Mom," Liam tugged at my sleeve. "What's happening?" Before I could answer, the ballroom faded around me as Daniel continued speaking, his words painting images so vivid I was transported back in time, to those cold fluorescent lights buzzing overhead in the antiseptic hallway of Memorial Hospital's oncology ward. My volunteer uniform, pale blue with a cheap plastic name badge, hung loose on my frame. I'd lost weight again. Formula cost more than groceries for myself. I'd reminded 3-year-old Liam to walk, not run, as he toddled away from me clutching a stack of crayon drawings. Room 412 came into view. The same room we'd visited every Saturday for the past month. The young woman inside, Julia, was barely 20 years old. Her once thick auburn hair had thinned to wisps against the white pillowcase. The chemotherapy wasn't working anymore. Everyone knew it, but no one said it aloud. "Julia," Liam had called out, his small feet picking up speed despite my warning. Julia turned from the window, her gaunt face transforming with a smile that erased the shadows of her illness for one brilliant moment. "There's my favorite artist." She'd extended thin arms toward him. I'd hung back, watching as Liam carefully spread his drawings across her blanket. "Claire saved my sister's Tupperware containers." Daniel's voice pulled me back to the present moment. "She washed them and brought them back each week filled with new soup, despite working overtime to make rent and raising Liam alone every Saturday." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I spotted my boss, Mr. Henderson, his expression shifting from confused to impressed. The Wilsons from my mother's garden club exchanged glances. Belle's sorority sisters whispered behind manicured hands. Julia lived 3 months longer than her doctors predicted, Daniel continued. On her final day, she told me that those Saturday afternoons, with Claire and Liam, gave her something to look forward to when treatments could no longer offer hope. Nancy stepped forward, her country club smile strained at the edges. "Daniel, darling, this is all very touching, but perhaps we should cut the cake instead." Her fingers closed around his forearm. He didn't acknowledge her. Claire never knew Julia was my sister. I watched from the doorway week after week, never introducing myself properly, because I didn't want to interrupt the only bright spots in Julia's final months. Liam's small hand found mine again. "I remember Miss Julie," he whispered. "She let me use her special purple marker." Tears burned behind my eyes. I'd forgotten that detail, the expensive art marker Julia insisted Liam use for his masterpieces, when her hands became too shaky to draw herself. Daniel reached up to his lapel, unpinned his white rose boutonniere, and placed it gently on the head table. The gesture carried a finality that silenced even the whispers. "I cannot marry into a family that treats its most courageous member this way," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. Belle's perfect makeup streaked down her face in black rivers. "What are you doing?" she hissed, reaching for him. Nancy lunged forward, abandoning pretense. "You can't be serious. Do you know how much this wedding cost?" Daniel stepped back, putting distance between himself and both women. No amount of money justifies cruelty to a mother and child. A memory surfaced at Daniel insisting on helping Liam build a model airplane at Thanksgiving dinner, while everyone else ignored him. Daniel asking about my volunteer work at the engagement party when Belle cut me off. Daniel watching me, always watching with that vaguely familiar expression I could never place. Now I knew why. A tear slid down my cheek. But for the first time in 12 years, it wasn't from humiliation. Something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in my chest, straightening my spine. Vindication. Champagne glasses crashed to the marble floor as Daniel moved toward us through the startled crowd. Wedding guests scattered like pigeons from a park bench, their designer heels clicking against stone as they created a path between us. "You're leaving me for her?" Belle's voice rose to a shriek that bounced off the crystal chandeliers. "At my wedding? For my own sister?" Mother rushed between tables, patting the shoulders of the city councilman's wife, murmuring to the hospital board chairman. Damage control in Chanel. I'd seen this performance before, at my high school graduation when I announced my state college scholarship instead of attending her alma mater. At Christmas dinner when I refused to pretend Liam was my nephew for the society photographer. "Claire." I turned to find Mr. Henderson, my boss of 7 years, standing beside me. The same man who avoided eye contact at company functions, when Mother cornered him to discuss my temporary position until I sorted out my situation. "You never mentioned your volunteer work at Memorial." Something shifted in his expression, respect replacing tolerance. "My wife was on that cancer floor 4 years ago. She still talks about the young mother and little boy who brought homemade soup every Saturday." Before I could respond, Liam tugged at Daniel's sleeve. My son, who hides behind my legs when strangers approach, looked up at Daniel with clear eyes. "Did my drawings really help your sister?" His small voice carried in the sudden pocket of quiet surrounding us. Daniel knelt to eye level with my boy, his tuxedo worth more than 3 months of my rent crumpling against the floor without a second thought. "Your kindness gave her joy when nothing else could." Daniel's voice dropped to a register meant only for Liam, but I caught every word. "Those rocket ships you drew, she kept them taped to her ceiling so she could see them from her bed." My throat tightened. "I recognized you instantly at the engagement dinner," Daniel said, rising to meet my eyes. "Your hair was longer then, braided with a blue ribbon." The memory surfaced, not of Daniel, but of Julia, the young woman with the same gray-blue eyes as the man standing before me now. The way she'd smile when Liam climbed onto her bed with his crayons and construction paper. How she'd asked about my classes, my dreams, when everyone else saw only my mistakes. "I spent months watching how they treated you," Daniel continued, his voice steady. "I kept hoping I was wrong, that perhaps they were different in private than they appeared in public." He glanced toward Belle, still wailing into my mother's shoulder. "I should have said something sooner." "I'm sorry." A strange calm settled over me like the quiet after a thunderstorm. For 12 years, I'd swallowed my words, choked on unspoken truths in the name of family peace. The weight of those unspoken truths suddenly felt too heavy to carry another step. I turned toward my mother. 12 years. My voice didn't shake. 12 years raising Liam while working full-time. 3 promotions. Nights spent studying for my CPA certification after he was asleep. Mornings at the hospital with patients everyone else had given up on. Nancy's eyes narrowed into familiar slits of disapproval. "Not once did you offer to babysit. Not once did you mention my name when your friends needed accounting help. You donated $10,000 to Belle's honeymoon fund, but complained about contributing to Liam's school supplies." The whispers around us grew louder. Her carefully cultivated image cracked like thin ice beneath spring sun. "Your shame was always misplaced." The words tasted like freedom on my tongue. A movement near the entrance caught my eye. Mrs. Rivera, my 72-year-old neighbor who watches Liam after school, stood clutching her car keys. Behind her, Dr. Wilson from the oncology department offered a quiet nod. My boss stepped forward. "Claire's been our most requested accountant for the past 2 years. he announced loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. The promotion we discussed last month comes with her own office starting Monday. A distinguished couple approached Daniel's parents. I realized with a jolt. Rather than the condemnation I expected, his mother took my free hand. "Julia told us about you," she said simply. "We've been waiting to meet you properly." From across the room, Miss Peyton, Liam's 6th grade teacher, raised her glass in a silent toast. I'd forgotten she'd be here. She was Daniel's second cousin. Daniel's voice broke through my shock. "Let me drive you and Liam home." "Mom." Belle lunged forward, diamond bracelet catching the light. "Are you going to let this happen?" "She's ruining my day again." Nancy's face hardened as she grabbed my arm, nails digging into skin. "This is all your fault, Claire. Always making trouble." The words should have hurt. They'd hurt for years. But something fundamental had shifted, like continental plates moving beneath my feet. 12 years of trying to earn scraps of approval. 12 years of protecting Liam from their disappointment while hoping they might someday see his worth. See mine. Nothing would ever change. "Liam, honey." I knelt beside my son. "Would you like to leave now?" He nodded, relief flooding his face. "Can Mr. Daniel come too?" Daniel offered his hand to my boy first, then extended his other to me. We walked toward the exit together, my navy dress no longer feeling too tight, my spine straightening with each step. Mrs. Rivera met us at the door, pressing her car keys into Daniel's palm. "I brought my Lincoln." "More comfortable for the boy," she whispered, then added, "I always knew you deserved better, dear." Outside, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of amber and gold. Liam looked up at me, confusion giving way to tentative hope. "Does this mean we don't have to see Grandma anymore?" The question pierced my heart and healed it simultaneously. I brushed his hair from his forehead, the same shade as mine, the same calic that never stays put. "We'll surround ourselves with people who love us for who we are." The promise felt solid, like ground beneath my feet after years of quicksand. Daniel opened Mrs. Rivera's car door, his face softened by the golden hour light. "I know a great ice cream place, if you're interested." No pressure. Just ice cream. Liam's face lit up, but he looked to me for permission. For the first time in 12 years, I made a choice untethered from my family's expectations. A choice based solely on what brought joy to the two people walking this path with me. Ice cream sounds perfect. 2 months later, a shaft of morning sunlight cut across my modest apartment, illuminating dust motes dancing above unopened moving boxes. 2 months since the wedding, and I still hadn't found the energy to fully unpack. Some wounds heal slower than others. I cradled my coffee mug, a gift from Daniel with courage written in simple script, and watched the steam rise in the quiet morning. The red light on my answering machine blinked with 6 new messages. Nancy's voice from yesterday's call echoed in my memory. "You're tearing this family apart," as if we had ever truly been whole. The certified letter from their family attorney sat unopened on the counter. Emotional distress, according to the receptionist who'd signed for it. Beside it, my phone displayed Belle's latest social media post, a black and white photo captioned, "Healing from betrayal isn't linear. The Thompson family specialty. Inflicting pain, then claiming victimhood." My accounting certification hung in a simple black frame on the wall, no longer hidden in a drawer. Across the room, Liam's bedroom door showcased his hospital junior volunteer certificate with a handwritten note. "Best storyteller we've ever had." Liam emerged with rumpled hair and the straightest shoulders he'd had in 12 years. His grades had improved steadily since we'd stopped attending family dinners, where Nancy dissected every achievement for flaws. "Is Daniel coming today?" he asked, reaching for orange juice. "This afternoon. He's bringing materials for my business plan." I couldn't stop the small smile that formed. My phone chimed with a text from my boss confirming my new office would be ready Monday. The corner suite with Clare Thompson, senior accountant, on the door. 3 major clients had requested me specifically for their quarterly reviews, And next week, I was presenting at the Regional Accounting Conference on work-life balance strategies. Mom, Liam said, studying a permission slip from school. Mrs. Wilson says I'm doing great in therapy. She says he squinted at the note, processing family dynamics in healthy ways. The last session, he'd finally spoken about Grandma's rejection. She didn't see how special you are, Mom, he'd said with 12-year-old wisdom that left the therapist blinking back tears. His homework assignment sat on the refrigerator, my hero, with my picture carefully drawn below. The doorbell rang promptly at 2 p.m. Daniel arrived carrying blueprint tubes and fabric samples. These are for your home office, he explained as Liam examined his basketball shoes. I found an antique desk that matches your certification frame almost exactly. He unrolled the blueprints, revealing plans for the spare room in his house transformed into a professional office space, with built-in shelving and natural lighting. Thompson Financial Solutions, he said, the name of my dream hanging between us. Every CEO needs a proper desk. My seed money, carefully saved from each paycheck for 12 years, could make this possible sooner than I dared hope. The business plan is nearly finished, Daniel continued. Your experience managing client portfolios while juggling single motherhood is exactly the unique selling point small business owners will appreciate. His patience washed over me like a bomb, and no ultimatums, no timelines, just steady support without demands. He spoke of Julia sometimes, late at night when Liam was asleep. How his sister faced terminal illness with grace. How watching me mother Liam reminded him of her strength. These stories helped me process my own wounds, showing me another way to view family beyond the toxic model I'd grown up with. The doorbell rang again, jarring our peaceful afternoon. Through the peephole, I saw Belle, mascara smudged beneath red-rimmed eyes. It's my sister, I said softly. Daniel immediately started gathering his papers. Would you like me to stay in the background? I nodded, grateful for his intuition. When I opened the door, Belle stumbled slightly, as if she'd been leaning against it. Claire, she said, voice cracking. I'm sorry, but you have to understand what you've done to the family. Even her apologies began with accusations. You've ruined everything, she continued, tears streaming. Like that time at high school graduation. Mother's been dropped from the charity board. Daddy's business partners are asking questions. And I can't show my face at the club. I stood straight, shoulders back. I'm sorry you're hurting, Belle. But I won't take blame for consequences that came from your choices. But we're family, she whispered, reaching for Liam. Come give Auntie a hug. My son stepped back, standing tall beside me. No, thank you, he said politely, his voice small but firm. From the kitchen doorway, Daniel watched silently, ready to step forward but letting us handle this moment ourselves. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel outnumbered by my family. I was finally on the stronger side. 6 months later, I straightened the framed accounting license on my office wall. Thompson Financial Solutions. The brass nameplate on my mahogany desk caught the morning light. 6 months of freedom tasted sweeter than I'd imagined. Through the half-open door, I glimpsed Melissa at reception, fielding calls with the practiced efficiency I'd hired her for last month when client overflow demanded help. My fingers brushed across Liam's latest therapy drawing displayed in a simple silver frame. Stick figures holding hands, himself, me, and Daniel beneath a rainbow. Next to it sat Daniel's photograph, his quiet smile reflecting the strength I'd come to lean on. The emerald ring on my right hand caught the light when I reached for my coffee, not an engagement yet, but a promise neither of us took lightly. Miss Thompson, Melissa appeared at my door. There's a Pastor Williams here to see you. Says he's from Calvary Heights. He's with an older woman. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyebrow rose slightly. My stomach tightened. Calvary Heights, my mother's church for 30 years. The teacup rattled against its saucer before I steadied my hand. Send them in, please. Pastor Williams entered first, a silver-haired dignity in a charcoal suit. Bible clutched unnecessarily against his chest like a shield. Behind him, my mother glided in, Chanel suit impeccable as always, though the collar sat looser around her neck than 6 months ago. Deep lines bracketed her mouth that makeup couldn't quite disguise. "Claire," she said, voice warm but eyes calculating. "You look healthy." "Mom, Pastor Williams, please sit down." I gestured to the visitor chairs, not leather like in Dad's office, but comfortable enough to suggest success. The door opened again. Liam slipped in from his after-school homework spot in the break room, immediately positioning himself beside my chair, shoulders square beneath his school uniform. At 12, he stood guard like a miniature soldier. "Hello, Liam," my mother said, smile tight. "My goodness, you've grown." Liam nodded once, not stepping forward for the hug she didn't offer. Pastor Williams cleared his throat. "Claire, your mother has been attending our family reconciliation ministry." He placed his Bible on his lap, opening to a marked page. "The good book teaches us that family bonds are sacred. Nancy has expressed deep desire for healing between you." I poured tea from the carafe on my desk, handing cups to each visitor. The voice I used with difficult clients, steady, professional. "That's thoughtful of you to come all this way, Pastor. May I ask what prompted this visit now?" My mother leaned forward, pearl swinging. "Family should stick together, Claire. What happened at the wedding was unfortunate, but surely we can move forward now." Her gaze flickered to Liam, then away. "The holidays are coming. It would look better if—" "Look better?" I repeated, cup paused midway to my lips. Pastor Williams intervened. "What Nancy means is that Christian forgiveness benefits everyone." He hesitated, glancing sideways at my mother. "And?" I prompted. My mother shifted, crossing her ankles. "The country club membership committee is reviewing our standing after that scene. Several longtime clients have requested their files." Her voice dropped. "They've come to you, haven't they?" "Ah, there it was." "We need to present a united family front again," she continued, regaining composure. "Your father's business reputation." "I see." I set my cup down with a gentle click. "This isn't about reconciliation. It's about appearance." Liam's hand rested on my shoulder, warm and solid. I opened my desk drawer and withdrew a leather-bound journal. 12 years of entries documenting every cutting remark, every Christmas where Liam received less than his cousins, every family gathering where we were seated at the far end of the table. I kept a record. My finger traced the worn cover. "Not out of bitterness, but because gaslighting was your specialty, Mom. Whenever I mentioned how you treated us, you claimed I was too sensitive or imagining things." Pastor Williams shifted uncomfortably. "I'm willing to consider limited contact," I continued. "But I have conditions. First, family therapy, not with your pastor, but with a licensed therapist. Second, acknowledgement of specific incidents in this 12-year journal, not vague apologies. Third, respect for boundaries I set regarding Liam." My mother's face brightened. "Of course, darling, whatever you need." "Though therapy seems excessive." "Non-negotiable," I interrupted. Her lips thinned. "Fine, though this office space is rather modest for someone with your clients. I could speak to your father about investing." "No, you always did make things difficult," she sighed, glancing around. "Daniel would likely propose properly if we reconciled. Men value family connections." A small laugh escaped me, surprising us all. "Daniel loves me precisely because I finally love myself. He admires my boundaries, not my willingness to erase them." I stood, smoothing my skirt. "Thank you for coming. I'll email therapist recommendations tomorrow." My mother rose, collecting her purse. "You're being stubborn, Claire." "I'm being clear," I corrected, walking them to the elevator with professional courtesy. Love is earned through actions, not demanded through obligation. She stepped into the elevator, turning for one final volley. "You're breaking your father's heart." The doors began to close. "Dad hasn't called once," I said quietly. You're here alone." Her eyes widened as the door slid shut. Liam's small hand slipped into mine as we returned to my office. "Was that okay, Mom?" "Yes," I whispered, my voice steady for perhaps the first time in 31 years. That was perfectly okay. A year later, at Christmas, firelight danced across Julia's photograph as I adjusted the silver frame on the mantel. Her smile, so much like Daniel's, seemed to approve of the pine garland and twinkling lights adorning our first Christmas together. "Mom, can we head to the hospital soon?" I promised the kids we'd help them open presents before dinner. Liam slid into the living room in his new Christmas sweater, eyes bright with purpose. At 13, his volunteer badge hung proudly beside mine, continuing the legacy that had unknowingly connected us to Daniel years ago. After I checked on dinner, I straightened the business award nestled between family photos. Thompson Financial Solutions, first year exceeding projections by 40%. Beside it sat the foundation certificate. Mercer Thompson Healthcare Education Fund for single parents, our way of turning past pain into future opportunity. The kitchen buzzed with activity. Mrs. Rivera sliced the roast with practiced precision, her arthritis-curved fingers still steady with the carving knife. "In my country, the matriarch always serves the meat," she announced, swatting away Daniel's father when he offered to help. Daniel's mother arranged Liam's school essay on the refrigerator with a magnet. "The title family is who loves you, not who matches your DNA," had earned him both an A and a parent-teacher conference where his teacher wept. "Dad's not used to taking orders," Daniel whispered against my ear, arms wrapped around my waist. "But he's never been happier about having a grandson." My former boss, now client Bill Henderson, raised his wine glass to the woman who made me look brilliant for promoting her. His wife nudged him for hiring her firm now. Laughter rippled through our home as 14 people squeezed around our tables. Hospital volunteers, therapy group friends, neighbors. Faces connected not by DNA, but by choice. "Present time," Daniel announced, kneeling before me with a small velvet box. The room fell silent. "This was Julia's," he said, opening the box to reveal an emerald ring, size smaller than the one I'd glimpsed in photographs. "She would have loved calling you her sister." His voice cracked slightly. "I'd like the honor of calling you my wife." Liam pushed forward, thrusting a handmade card into my hands. Crayon letters spelled out, "Will you let Daniel be my real dad?" Tears of overwhelming joy, not shame or rejection, spilled down my cheeks as I nodded, unable to speak as they both embraced me. Later, when the plates were cleared and adoption papers for Liam to take the Mercer name were signed on my desk, beside the half-finished manuscript, "The Family We Choose," the doorbell rang. "I've got it," I told Daniel, who was teaching Liam his family's traditional Christmas card game. Snow swirled behind my mother as she stood on the porch, looking smaller than I remembered. Gray had overtaken the carefully maintained silver of her hair. She clutched a small package wrapped in simple red paper. "I was wrong," she said without preamble, no manipulation lacing her words. "I'm sorry." I stared at her, searching for the familiar calculation in her eyes, but finding only exhaustion and regret. My hand hesitated on the door, neither closing it nor opening it wider. Not yet. Just slightly ajar, like the possibility of forgiveness itself. I returned to our celebration without mentioning Nancy's appearance, watching our gathered family with quiet wonder. Daniel's parents steal cards while Mrs. Rivera teaches Liam Spanish Christmas carols. My therapy group friends argue good-naturedly about basketball with Bill. The old family album sits on the bookshelf, but beside it stands a new one, already half filled with photographs of people who chose us and whom we chose in return. Sometimes the happiest endings come after the courage to walk away.